It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. There's not a lot of news for you tonight, but that's okay. Our featured story, we're going to be talking all about Paul Ingrassia. Guys, what's going on? What is going on? It seems like there is a purge. There is a purge of real blasting off in the group chat. What's that? So last week we talked all about Gavin Wax. Gavin Wax exposed a half dozen or a dozen young Republicans who were going off in their group chat about black people and Jews and rape and other things, and they all got fired. They're all gone. And Gavin Wax is a Jew. So he blew up the spot of his fellow Goyim, or his, I guess the Goyim around him, for being based. They all lost their jobs. Now this week it's happening again. And our featured story will be talking about Paul Ingrassia. He was nominated to be in the office of the special counsel in the government by Trump. It's a very big position. And Paul Ingrassia is a far-right guy. Trump loyalist, America First, MAGA. He's very right-wing. He would have been a very good personnel choice. But he was under a lot of scrutiny because of his outspoken far-right views on social media. At one point, he advocated for me to be unbanned on Twitter. I believe he's associated with the Tates in some way. So there was a lot of scrutiny about him. And in the past 2 weeks, there's been two major hit pieces about him. The first about some story about him and a girl in a hotel going to work. It wasn't enough to bring him down. Second scandal has erupted. Text messages that are purported to be sent by him in a group chat have been made public. This is in another article, new scandal, where he's talking about MLK Jr. and he's talking about Indians and Jews. And now because of another group chat leak or text message leak, he is now withdrawing. I don't know who's withdrawing it, if it's the administration or if it's him, but his nomination has been withdrawn from the Senate. He was up for a Senate confirmed position. That's now done because he would not be able to get the votes because of the leak. So we'll talk all about it. I fear that there is something deeper going on here. I think there's more to the story here. And I think that what is really going on is that there are certain elements in the government that have become aware, as everybody is now, of just how right-wing the youth is getting. And not just the youth. When we think of the youth, we think about college Republicans and these young guys, kids. We think about teenagers, 20-somethings. But it's really everybody. It's really everybody. Every white male aged 18 to, let's say, 40 has become very right-wing, very pro-Trump, very America First, very Christian, very conservative. At least that is where the arrow is pointing. And it seems that it has reached a critical mass in the past couple of years. As such, these people are in the government. These people are all over the system. They're in the young Republicans. They're elected officials. It's guys like this. They're a part of this generational wave of young white guys, and many of them not even white, actually, but just young, very conservative men that are becoming, let's say, nationalists. Like they're not basic bitch conservatives. They're not moderate Republicans. Everybody is shifted to the right, and these people are cropping up everywhere. And what I think is happening now is there is a concerted effort to bring attention to them in a focused way. And so I think that whether it's agents or it's some degree of surveillance, they are looking for these people. They're looking for all of the N-words. They're looking for all of the other opinions that are being expressed in private and text messages and group chats, and they're looking to make those public. And that will create a general climate of anxiety about this dilemma, this phenomenon for the system, which will then increase censorship, increase scrutiny, all these things, and eventually drive all these people out of politics. They don't want people like Paul Ingrassia as special counsel. They don't want people like that in DHS, in the DOJ. They don't want them in the Young Republicans. They don't want them where they are and where they're ascending. So there's very clearly something up here. They are trying to arrest this trend, which has been going on for years. So we'll talk about that. On a related note, we're also going to talk about a man in Texas who was arrested for threatening Laura Loomer and Seth Dillon and a number of other Jewish conservatives on Twitter. And before everybody gets on my case, because look, I'm going to be honest, this is terrible. This is a horrendous, terrible situation. There was a young man who had an anonymous Twitter account, not a big account. He didn't have it for very long. I think the handle was Zionists Are Scum or something like that. And he's on Twitter threatening to kill everybody. He's on Twitter threatening to kill Laura Loomer, Seth Dillon, all these people, Josh Hammer. He gets charged in Florida, where they have a very pro-Israel, pro-Jewish state government. So he is arrested in Texas to be extradited to Florida for using a phone to communicate these threats. They're going to send him to Florida, put him in jail. And I saw this, and it immediately came to me that this is the future. The future is that all this stuff that we have been talking about, I am increasingly becoming worried that it has reached a high watermark. And now there is exuberance. Now there is carelessness, recklessness. Let's say the pendulum is about to swing in the other direction. It has reached its apogee. And it seems that we're now going back in the other direction, away from a lot of the openness that has characterized discussion on this topic for the past couple of years. And it's a number of developments that have made me feel this way. And so I saw this arrest, and the giant alarm bell that went off in my mind is they're going to do this to more people. There's going to be a false flag or a real thing. And they're going to use that to undo all the progress that has been made in the past 2 years, or at least they'll attempt to. There's going to be censorship. There might be a legal element to that. There's going to be a full frontal attack from the media now that they have taken back control over the media, acquiring CBS, TikTok, other properties. You're going to start to see all this stuff move in the other direction. It's going to be a full-scale assault on noticing. Critique of Israel, critique of Jews, it's all going to start to go in the other direction. So we'll talk about this story. It's interesting, though, because what's notable about this guy, you look at a Twitter account like that and you'd say, well, it's a Twitter account called Zionists Are Scum, and he hates all these Jewish conservatives. You're asking yourself, well, who did he follow on Twitter? Well, he followed Candace Owens. He did not follow me. Would you like to know why? Because I blocked him. Because he called me a traitor or whatever, because I said Israel didn't kill Charlie Kirk. Now, there's a lesson in this. Increasingly, these psychos that are out there, or people that they can turn into patsies, whatever you want to say, these people that tend to be lowbrow, low IQ, maniacal, malevolent, that might talk about doing horrible things or do horrible things or get tricked into doing horrible things, they're not being set up because the government wants them. The government wants people that they could plausibly blame for creating people like that. And that's why lately I've been saying, I think we need to pump the brakes, because it's very clear where this is going. It's very obvious based on all the things we've been talking about. The CBS Bari Weiss story, the Larry Ellison media empire, this eighth front in the information war, that Netanyahu is fighting, the ceasefire. Like it's all very clear to me that this is where this is going to go. And that is how they operate. They'll be targeting people based on that. So anyway, we'll talk about all that. Should be a pretty good show. I'll tell you exactly what I mean by it because that is very disturbing. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. It's good to be back in Chicago doing the show. I know I've been doing a ton of travel lately, and I'm going to be here all week, okay? I know I haven't been doing a lot of shows because I've just had a lot going on, but I'll be here the rest of the week. So there's going to be 4 shows this week, including tonight, and then I'll be back next week for a full week next week as well. So it's going to be, you're going to get the show. And people are complaining about it. They're saying he should stop doing collabs. He needs to do the show. First of all, shut the fuck up. Second of all, I had this thing last week that I had committed to a long time ago, and I just had to be out of town for a few days. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't have agreed to it, but the timing wasn't ideal. I've been on the road for a long time. Then I had this thing that I had scheduled for many months in advance that I had to do. This collaboration that I'd actually been working on for a really long time. And so the timing just wasn't convenient because I didn't know that I'd be in the middle of a generational run, flying around, doing all this stuff. So the timing was not great on that, but I couldn't really help it. So that's just why it's been a little chaotic and I haven't done a ton of shows because I see people saying he needs to stay home. He should stop doing collabs. Some of it's in a way outside my control. The timing of it isn't ideal, but I am going to be here for the next couple weeks. What else? Remember to get your hats, Fuentes.store, blue, camo, black, and we have some new products. We have our white ass nigga going hard as fuck t-shirt, brand new, and people are already getting them. I got mine. Those are not a pre-order. Those are print to order, print on demand. So I know people from August are still getting their hat shipments. People from September are starting to get their hats. We fulfill the hats, but the shirts are print on demand, so you get them in like a week. Same thing with the flags. I believe that's the same deal. So we also have a couple of new flags as well. So check that out, Fuentes.store. Subscribe to the website, americafirst.plus. $100 a month club, you get to talk to me. So I'm not doing a show lately, and I haven't really been on Twitter a lot, but I am in the group chat talking to people every day. So if you want to check that out, it's americafirst.plus. $100 a month club, you get to hang out with me, and I tell you the inside scoop on everything. But you could also subscribe for $15 a month, get access to the entire archive, all my videos, shows, going back 10 years, it's all there. So that's out of the way. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly before we get into the news is this Indian holiday that we're apparently all celebrating now. What is Diwali? What is this? Is this supposed to be the Heritage American administration? People have a lot of explaining to do because all I see when I go on Twitter, when people defend this administration, when people defend Trump, when they defend the administration, I see a lot of white guys, I see a lot of white dorks saying Trump is for Heritage America. Hello, patriot. Hey, patriot, this is for hearth and home. We have to deport illegals for patriot heritage Americans. Yeah, so about that. So what are we doing then on Diwali? Heritage. Hey, patriot. So what's Diwali then? Huh? Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you a little something. I have been critical of this administration all year. I didn't vote for Trump. I was critical of Trump throughout the campaign, throughout the entire general election campaign. And I had all these people tell me, with Trump, you win. With Zionists, you win. This is for Heritage America. This is for patriots. We got to be loyal to Trump. And then, well, what do we get day in and day out? We get trips to Israel. Trump goes to Israel. Israel comes to America. We get speeches with Netanyahu. We get kissing the wall. We get Vance and Kushner And Steve Witkoff in Israel. We get Indians celebrating Diwali. We get Wagaguru chanting at the RNC. What's going on? Did you see this? Yesterday in the Oval Office, Trump is there surrounded. He's surrounded by them. It's like a Jubilee video. Trump versus 600 million Indians. One MAGA president versus 600 million Indians that he hired. Did you see this? Trump is in the Oval Office with Kash Patel, Sri Ram Krishnam, all the other Indians, the one in the DOJ. What's her name? Harmeet Dillon. He's with all the Indians, of which there are many, that he hired in the government, and they're celebrating this Hindu holiday. They're lighting some candle on top of a bed of flowers, and Trump himself lights the candle. And they, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, wish us a happy Diwali. A happy Diwali. Are you winning? Did you get what you voted for yet? What's going on? And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm the only one that will be honest about this administration, frankly. You take a look around this government, and it's a lot of this. And the way that I would characterize it is like this. This Trump administration was supposed to be, I am your voice, America first. We say Merry Christmas here, make America great again. It is supposed to be explicitly white, American, patriotic, Christian, European. Like when we voted, or you voted for the second Trump administration, what you were promised and what you were supposed to get is American identity, which is the idea that as America becomes more diverse racially and ethnically and culturally, it is important that we shore up the center. And what do I mean by that? There's all these competing claims about what America is. Is it for everybody? Is it for some people? Who is it for? What is it? Is it Christian? Is it something else? Is it white? Is it for everyone other than whites? It used to be very clear and obvious and basically undeniable what America was. Because who lived here is all white Christians. 90% white Christians. Now, it's hard to say. Because if you live in LA or Miami or Texas or New York or Seattle, it doesn't look like America. It doesn't feel like America. You're outnumbered. As this changes, it is important, and this is really what the Trump movement is supposed to be about. It is important for the government to be very clear about what America is. And it doesn't mean that other people can't live here, but it means that they're not going to change what being American is. And what it is, as Trump said, is saying Merry Christmas. What it is our heritage of explorers and pioneers. What it is an unbroken chain genetically and culturally that goes back to the British Empire, the Magna Carta, the Roman Empire, the Greeks. It's European, Western civilization. It's Christendom. It is a rich history. And so in a sense, we're voting for mass deportations and border walls. We're voting for terrorists. We're voting for nationalism, unitary, unified executive. But what do all these things mean? On a deeper level, all these things mean that we're going to reassert American identity. That's what it means to close the borders and build walls. That's what it means to shut the door to foreign labor and foreign goods. That's what it means to have a powerful executive that can bypass the money power in the Congress. That's sort of the whole point. But when you look at this administration, you find anything other than that. This is like one of the most diverse administrations, arguably, in history. It's a lot of Indians. It's a lot of Jews. It's a lot of gays. That's your Republican Party now. It's a lot of women in cabinet positions. It's a lot of Indians that say things like, see you in Valhalla, and they're not Christian at all. They celebrate Diwali. It's a lot of Jews that worship Israel, or evangelical Christians that worship Israel for that matter. And it's some gays also. It's Scott Bessent. It's Rick Grinnell. And it's amazing to me. This is why I really had to say something during the election last year. It's amazing how this administration is everything to everyone. To the left, it's a monarchy. To the right, it's the second coming of Hitler or George Washington, however you want to cut it. But what it obviously is an extremely liberal administration, and in many ways a continuation of the deep state, of the administrations that came before. So I look at these things like Diwali, and some people easily dismiss that. They say, well, that's harmless pandering. And I get that. I'm not an idiot. I see that. Some people say this is harmless pandering. It's a form of cultural outreach. We're pandering to India, which is going to be a key ally in the 21st and 22nd centuries. There are a lot of Indians in tech and in the donor world for the Republican Party. I understand this. And so some people say this is a throwaway. Trump does a ceremony, big whip. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just pandering. But I would say we elected Trump so we wouldn't have to pander. Isn't that sort of the whole point? For all the people that would say this is harmless pandering, this is political, so what? They did a ceremony in the White House. It doesn't mean anything. Well, it means something that there's a ton of Indians in government. Does that mean a little more? I think so. And I think more than that, the whole Trump movement is premised on the idea that we're done pandering. Isn't that the whole point? We're done doing cultural outreach to foreigners. We're done doing cultural outreach to minorities, outsiders, aliens. You're welcome to be here on some level, those that have citizenship, those that have a legal standing to be here. But America will not bend or change to accommodate you. That's the whole point. And actually, the inverse is also true, that we would begin pandering to Americans. Not only would we not be doing the Heritage Month and the diversity cultural outreach and the Obama Presidential Library type shit, but actually the opposite was also true. We would be pandering to the Americans, to white people, to Christians, to historic Americans, heritage Americans, heirloom tomatoes, heritage chickens, farm fresh eggs, whatever. We'd be pandering to those people, real Americans, but you don't see a whole lot of that. You see a lot of pandering in the other direction, almost no pandering anymore to the white people. We don't hear about Austin Metcalf. We don't hear about the things that matter to white people. So I hope you don't think I'm making a big deal out of it, and I'm not trying to. It's just this is the texture of the Trump movement. It is selling the white people one thing. In reality, it's something completely different. You would think, based on how some of these people running the social media accounts, the way that they talk, the DHS Twitter account, you'd think you're getting one thing. You'd think the way they raise the sign for mass deportations, you're getting one thing. Really, you're getting something completely different. And people are always telling us, well, that's just politics. But the whole premise of this movement is that it would transcend the petty politics of the past. That's the whole idea. So you can't have it all ways. You can't tell us this is another bullshit political politics and business as usual administration that just has to do certain things because that's the way it is, but also expect people to die out of loyalty. You also then can't expect people to have that revolutionary fervor and personal loyalty to the president and all of that. You can have it one way, but not the other. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, Trump has to do these things. It is what it is. And then say, wait, you're leaving? Why? You have to vote for Trump. This is going to be the best thing ever. It's like, which is it? Is it political bullshit or is it the best thing ever? So anyway, that's the Diwali celebration. I don't like that. That's the whole point. We don't have to do cultural outreach anymore, but here we are. I want to move on, though. I want to get into our news for tonight. It's going to be a very important show. This isn't, I don't think, groundbreaking news. Like, it's not world-changing news. It's not even super interesting, in my opinion. But, excuse me, This is going to be a very important show because I'm going to once again tell you the future. And there are rare occasions when I really get a strong gut feeling, a gut level feeling about where things are headed. And I felt that way about the Trump campaign, and I felt that way about a few different things. But I'm feeling that about this. Today, there is a big story about how Paul Ingrassia, who is a nominee for the special counsel in the government, had his group chat leaked. The second, and which is related, is about a guy on Twitter who got arrested for making anti-Semitic threats against people like Laura Loomer. And they're very related. And the first story, which I want to talk about, is about Paul Ingrassia. I guess we'll talk about this first. And for a lot of people, they don't know who this guy is. Maybe they're not familiar. It is a lot of inside politics. This is like DC business. This is the business of government. Paul Ingrassia, I believe, was a liaison. He was legal counsel in a few different federal departments under Trump. Before that, he was on social media. He had a Substack. He had a big social media profile. And he seemed to me to be pretty far right. He seemed to me to be a big Trump supporter, very America First, pretty outspoken, ethnically Italian. I like that about him. He also called for me to be unbanned on Twitter. He said that that would be consistent with free speech if I were restored. That's before I was. And into the second Trump administration, this guy landed a job. And he made the rounds. I think he was at DOJ and then DHS. And then they nominated him for a cabinet, or not a cabinet level position, but for a Senate confirmation position. And any position that needs to get confirmed in the U.S. Senate is an important position. So he's in the Trump government. He's in some important departments. He has an important job. And then they nominate him, and he has to be confirmed in the Senate for a post in the office of the special counsel. This is a really big deal because, as we've talked about for many years, personnel is policy. It's not enough that we elect Trump. We need to elect Trump, and then we need Trump to bring in and bring up with him younger staffers for two reasons. So they can support him. He needs to hire the right people that are going to be loyal to him and America First so they can actually execute his agenda. So you need the right people running the federal departments and agencies so that when Trump signs an executive order, when Congress passes a bill, they can carry it out. They can actually make sure it gets properly executed. That's one. But two, and maybe more importantly for the long term, they're both important, but I regard the second as maybe equally important or more important, is that you start to change the landscape of government so that younger people can make their career and climb the ladder. And so it's a very big deal that in the second administration of Trump, you have a lot of very right-wing guys in the young Republicans, in the college Republicans, and then going into government, then getting into the federal departments and agencies, getting into the federal bureaucracy. Because if we can get very far-right people in the bureaucracy and they build up their resume and they get a career and so on, eventually they will be the deep state. Eventually, maybe not, it's inevitable, but they can be the deep state. They're qualified. They're there. At least they're there for 4 years. It's a good deal. And it says something about the face and the landscape of the Trump administration that a guy like that is tolerated. Because as you know, in previous administrations, even in the first Trump administration, it was not that way. Darren Beattie got kicked out of the first Trump administration as a speechwriter because they found out he went to some alt-right conference in 2013. And even a very far-right, again, the Trump administration, not even any Republican, but a Trump administration, they said that was too far. He had to be fired over that. And this second term is very different. Darren Beattie is now in the State Department after he was fired after only just a few months the first time around because of a bad story that didn't even get published when he got fired in the first term. Now he's in State Department. Now you got people like Ingrassia. You got other good people that are in. You got other, you could say, based people inside the administration. And they're helping Trump carry out his agenda. And they're also planting a flag in D.C. and potentially maybe they'll be there in a future Republican administration. This is a good thing. But the big story is that Ingrassia is being shot out of the sky. This did not go unnoticed. All the things I'm telling you did not go unnoticed because the media and the left and the establishment elements in the right, they are acutely aware that this is happening. And they are aware that the younger generation is very far right. We are in the age of Donald Trump. In the age of Donald Trump, every man under the age of 40 is extremely based. Every white man that is conservative, and even a lot of the non-white ones too, Asians, Hispanics, and some blacks, they're very conservative. They're more conservative maybe than the Republican Party has ever been. And naturally, those people are finding their way into the government. They're finding their way into the college Republicans, the young Republicans, the federal bureaucracy, into Congress, into state legislatures, because all these things reflect society. In the age of Reagan, all the people that were animated by that flavor of conservatism, they got active and they became the Republican Party of this first quarter of this century. In the age of Trump, all the people that are getting red-pilled and people that are being won over to America First and MAGA to a stronger flavor of conservatism, these are the people. This is the character now of the conservatives, not all of them, but many of them, that are starting to enter politics in a major way. And the media, the left, and the establishment on the right, they don't like that. For obvious reasons. The media and the left are on the left-wing side. They don't want to see the government taken over by far-right young guys. And the establishment right, that's not conducive to their interests either. The establishment right is trying to appease the donors. They're trying to do outreach to minorities, women. Many of them are minorities, gays, and women themselves. So the establishment right isn't happy about it either. And this is the kind of alliance you see constantly. The establishment right working with the left and the media to hurt the far-right insurgency. And I think that's exactly what happened here. Ingrassia, who I don't know, a lot of people have associated him with me. I don't know the man. I don't believe I've ever met the man. So this is not a Groyper. This is not someone I'm affiliated with. But clearly, because he defended my right to be on Twitter, he's pro-free speech, pro-Trump, very conservative Catholic. I mean, he seems like a solid guy, ideologically sound. This is the perfect example of the type of person that the left, the media, and the establishment does not want. They don't want a guy like that anywhere near politics. They don't want him in any of the organs of the Republican machine, least of all the government. So this guy, who, again, he represents this generation in a way, he's emblematic of it, he gets put up, nominated for this top position in the office of the special counsel. And all of a sudden, there's a giant media campaign against him. They try to connect him to me, to Andrew Tate. They bring up his old tweets. And they put this guy's nomination on ice for a little while. They wait for it to blow over. And in the Senate, you got a lot of bad Republicans. You got people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. They're the tip of the iceberg. But you also got Mitch McConnell. You got a lot of bad Republicans that you would call rhinos, cucks, establishment. With 53 votes, you can't afford a lot of defections. So the media's hitting this guy really hard, saying it's unacceptable for someone that is that far right to be that high up. The media is leaning on the Senate Republicans, who are all too happy to oblige, to keep this guy out of the spot. And so they put his nomination on ice. They pause it. Then, a few weeks ago, his nomination gets put back on the schedule. And they're going to reconsider his confirmation hearing. And that was coming up this week. It was looking like there'd be a vote. Maybe he'd have the votes. Maybe he wouldn't. There was some back and forth about this. Maybe Trump would come in at the very last second. Trump likes this guy. But then there's two major hit pieces in the media against him. Two hit pieces with a lot of specificity. The first hit piece comes out and says that he shared a hotel room with a female staffer. And she denies some of the allegations, and he denies some of the allegations. They said there was something untoward or improper about this. They both say nothing really happened. There's no there. It wasn't really a big deal. But they try to create this scandal like there's some kind of sexual impropriety or something, some kind of personal issue. And that totally falls flat. Full steam ahead. Looks like he's going to go through anyway. At least it's going to be up for a vote, and he might get in. Then, in the past day, another major scandal comes out. A second one. And this time they say they got all his text messages, and he's talking about Martin Luther King Jr. in a disparaging way, and he's talking about Indians and Jews in a negative way. And it's another group chat scandal where he's put all these bad texts out there, which they're attributing to him. Senate Republicans say they're not going to vote for him. They pull his nomination. Now he's done. He might go back to his old job. He might not. He might be toast. And I saw this week, and it reminded me of what happened last week with Gavin Wax. It's the same story in many ways. It's identical. Last week, he had a dozen young Republicans. They're in a group chat, and they're saying things they shouldn't have been saying in writing in a group chat, because this is our reality. They're making inappropriate jokes, controversial jokes, racial humor, things like that, that obviously are not appropriate for mixed company or for a headline. But they're posting these things, and I don't encourage that. I don't think that's a good idea. The screenshots get leaked, and these guys all get fired. It's a massacre. One guy's a state rep. They're calling for him to resign. Everybody else got fired. They're getting killed in the local press. These guys are going to have a hard time finding work for the foreseeable future, and their personal lives are in jeopardy. When conservatives are getting shot in the head all the time, that's also not ideal either, to have a lot of attention on them and for them to be hit in the media locally and nationally as Nazis, racist, pro-rape, whatever, even though we know what that is. It's jokes. It's colorful humor, let's say. So that happens last week, and that was an inside job. That was Gavin Wax, the president, now former president of the New York Young Republican Club, and now working in the State Department, and he's a Jew. He's a delegate for the Zionist Organization of America. And it's this guy. The call is coming from inside the House. It's a Jewish Republican that throws these guys under the bus, that throws young Republicans under the bus, who are probably very far right, for making inappropriate jokes. Then this week, Paul Ingrassia, who leaked the story to the press about this hotel room situation. How else would the press know? The call's coming from inside the House. Somebody ratted him out to the press about that, and it didn't work. So then somebody went to the press about something else. That was plan B, and they had the screenshots. Somebody that was in his group chat, somebody that he was texting, got the messages and aired them out. Probably the press had them all along, but saved them until right before the confirmation hearing so that it would have maximum effect, so that it couldn't be rescheduled, so that it came on the heels of this other story. They wanted to pile up the negative press. They wanted to backload it right before the hearing. And they wanted to time it precisely so it would all go off at the same time right before the vote occurred so that the administration would have no choice but to pull the nomination. And this is the story. We'll read through it from the New York Times. It says, quote, Paul Ingrassia, President Trump's top pick for a watchdog position, announced Tuesday he was withdrawing from consideration because he did not have enough Republican support to be confirmed. He said, I will be withdrawing myself from Thursday's HSGAC hearing to lead the Office of Special Counsel because, unfortunately, I do not have enough Republican votes at this time. Trump nominated Ingrassia to lead the Office of Special Counsel, an independent agency that protects federal employees from prohibited personnel practices. A White House official confirmed to NBC that Ingrassia is no longer the nominee. Ingrassia had come under scrutiny in recent weeks after Politico reported that he and a colleague had accused him of sexual harassment, citing 3 unnamed administration officials. See, so this came from inside. In a new article on Monday, Politico reported on a text chat in which Ingrassia sent messages saying he had a Nazi streak and that MLK Jr. Day should be tossed into the seventh circle of hell. Ingrassia's lawyer Monday night pointed to a previous statement denying Ingrassia had harassed any coworkers in connection with any employment. His lawyer said the text messages reported on Monday may not be authentic, and even if they are, they clearly read as self-deprecating and satirical. Senators Rick Scott, James Lankford, Ron Johnson all told reporters they intended to vote against Ingrassia. Lankford, telling reporters Tuesday morning that he was a no on the nomination, said, "I think it'd be very difficult for a lot of federal employees to be able to say he's impartial when he says things like, 'never trust an Indian,' or the comments that he's made about Jews." What is going on? It's obvious. Action, reaction. For the past couple of years, you could say maybe the past 5 or 6 years, there is a very radical strain of conservative, reactionary, right-wing thought among the youth and on the internet in Republican politics. Everybody knows that. It's the Groypers, it's the alt-right, it's whatever you want to call it. There is a far-right streak. It seems that the youth, the young white men, are getting more right-wing than ever. And it's not just kids anymore. Those people that were just coming of age during the Trump election, like myself, we're now in our late 20s, maybe early 30s. And people like that, not myself in particular, but people of that demographic cohort, they're starting to show up. At the college Republicans, young Republicans, inside the government, like I said. And everyone is deeply aware of this. Everyone's becoming aware of this. And they're alarmed. The media and the left are becoming aware of this, and they want to drag all this stuff out there to tar the GOP as a Nazi party that's run by the Hitler Youth. And they want oversight hearings, and they want subpoenas, and they want hate speech laws, and they want to use that as a wrecking ball to knock this far-right ascendancy off course. But they're working with the establishment right. The establishment knows this too. And by the establishment, I mean the Jewish Zionists, as well as the libertarians, the tech bros, all of the money, all the power that drives the Republican Party. They don't want a bunch of young nationalists getting involved. The Republican Party serves as a mechanism to basically move wealth around. The Republican Party is there to secure the interests of its donors. Oil and gas, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, Israel. They don't want the GOP to be filled up with energetic, Catholic, radical, young, right-wing, white guys that can't be bought, that don't have a ton of skeletons in their closet. They want people that are blackmailable. They want people that are up for sale. They want Jewish spies that'll work for Israel and that'll interface with all the different industries. They want gay men who have no scruples or are easy to be blackmailed. They want grifters and simps, suckers, idiots, just a general collection of the lowest common denominator that they are there because they don't have any other skills or talents. They'll take a paycheck. They're obedient. That's who they want in the GOP. That's who they want in the bureaucracy in the White House. They want people that are loyal to the interests because they're mercenaries or there's an ethnic affinity rather than patriots, people loyal to Trump or to America First or something else. And so what is going on over the past week is obvious, which is that this is like the end of The Godfather. This is a massacre. This is the new MO, which is all those group chats that everybody's in, and they're dropping the N-word, and they're posting my clips, or they're being funny. They're talking about Jews or racism or Nazis. All that stuff has been and is being screenshotted, screen recorded, passed around. It is being stored on hard drives. It is being put in dossiers, and it is now being weaponized. And it is being weaponized in an imminent way. We have Ingrassia's text. He's up for the nomination. So deploy it and get his nomination revoked. He won't be a problem anymore. But it's also being used in a general way to create a new conversation. And the new conversation is, we need to talk about the Gen Z far-right problem. We need to talk about the Groyper problem. We need to talk about all these young far-right guys infiltrating politics. And what do you think that conversation points towards? We need to do something to stop this. How will we stop? And I've said this before. If you think for 1 second that it's going to be easy, that we're going to walk through the White House, I used the term of some of these people before. A lot of these young idealistic guys, they think they're going to waltz right into the White House, being based and take over the government. If you think you're going to get away with that, you're wrong. Because the people that have the power and privileges, they're very jealous. They're jealously guarding their power and privilege. They're not giving it up to some 25-year-old punk, some 30-year-old lawyer who's going off on Twitter about the Jews or something. They're not giving up the portfolio to that guy. And so they will deploy their spies. They will deploy their double agents. They will use their connections in the media. And yes, they'll work with the left. They'll work with people like Gavin Wax. Gavin Wax is one of them. They will work with Politico. They will give them the receipts, and they will burn the people that they view as threatening. And they will use that to create a conversation, and then they will use that to generate some kind of new understanding or new set of rules, personnel policies to weed these people out. That's the whole point. So this is the beginning. I mean, in many ways, this is ongoing. This has been happening for many years, for generations. That the worst things a person says on these types of matters, whether publicly or privately, these things are trotted out for the purpose of reputation destruction to suppress them. But this is being applied now in a very aggressive way because they see what's happening. They want an administration of Darren Beatty's and Gavin Wax's and Brooke Rollins. They want an administration of people like that. They do not want an administration filled with Catholic crusaders and Christian nationalists and America First patriots. They don't want that. They don't want those guys, so they're going to blow them up. The establishment will work with the left and the left-wing media to blow them up. And you want to know the grand irony of all that? Do you want to know the delicious, sweet, succulent, scrumptious irony of it all? Is it not the establishment elements on the right, including and especially the Jews, that are always scaremongering about the left? Like, think about it, because what I'm describing here is a handshake between the establishment right and the left, which is killing us, to prevent the government from getting too right-wing. Literally, our party is conspiring with our mortal enemies that want to genocide us to prevent us, their own voters, from getting what we want. Because think about where's the base? The base wants the country to be more Christian. It wants the country to have fewer immigrants. It wants the country to be more right-wing. The country is shifted to the right. And that's why they elected Trump a second time, in spite of everything. J6 and the convictions and all the ways they tried to stop him. He was elected in spite of that, in some ways, because the consensus has shifted to the right. And in order to deprive the country and the Republican voters of what they voted for, the Republican Party itself is now going to work with the Democrats, the media, and the broader left to destroy the youngest and most idealistic and patriotic people that are actually going to deliver the change. That's what we're talking about. And the rich irony is that it is those same people that are constantly telling us about how we all just need to unite against the left. That it's not about Israel. Forget about Israel. We need to focus on the Democrats. We need to fight the left. We need hot girls for Cuomo. We need to align everybody to fight Zohran Mamdani. We need to fight the anti-Semites at Columbia. We need to fight the radical left all over the place. So stop talking about Israel and stop criticizing Trump and stop talking about Epstein. We're all on the same team. We're all Republicans, and we all need to fight the left. It's the left, the communists, and the Muslims working together to destroy America. That's the narrative we hear from the Zionists. That's the rhetoric we hear from Bill Ackman. That's the rhetoric we hear from the establishment. And we're supposed to say, oh, okay, we'll vote for Trump, and yeah, we'll sort of eat shit when they do the big, beautiful bill or they give $30 billion to Israel because, we're all Republicans. And there's right-wing Jews that are on our side, and there's right-wing billionaires that are on our side. But then, the second that you get a 20-something-year-old white guy that is to the right of Nikki Haley, the second that a guy like that actually gets any real position or power, they race across the street to Politico and CNN to ruin that guy's life over political correctness. They race across the street to say, this guy needs to lose his job. He's a racist. He made a woman feel uncomfortable in the office and he said nigger in a group chat. So ruin his life. So what happened? I thought we're all in it together and I thought cancel culture was over. And I thought, this is serious business now because the left is killing people. Yeah, right up until one of us actually gets the power. Because the second that a real person gets power, and by that I mean a real American, a real right-winger, the second that someone from outside the club gets power, even within the right is going to sell us out to the left. Think about that, because that's what this is. Gavin Wax and Ingrassia, these leaks came from inside. 12 college Republicans fired for racism because they were delivered to the murderous left on a silver platter by Jew boy Gavin Wax. He's not Italian, he's a Jew. These are your conservatives. These are your hardcore Republicans, that cocksucker. He's going to hand deliver not one, not his enemy, but a dozen young Republicans to the left on the charge of racism and anti-Semitism. And this guy thinks he's far right and based. He's a fucking shill. And same thing happened here. Ingrassia, who is more MAGA than this guy? He's a personal friend of Trump's. He's a Trump loyalist. He's America First. He's MAGA. He's Christian. Like, who's more representative of where the mood of the moment is than this guy? And his own people, in his own government, in his own group chat, sold him out to the left because people like that are not actually supposed to have real power. In case you haven't gotten it yet, your job is to pay your taxes and deliver the votes and shut the fuck up. That's all you can do. That's all they want from you. They hate you. The Democrats shoot you, and the Republicans will let the Democrats shoot you. They hate you. They want your vote, and then they want you to shut up. So they will pander to you. They'll hold up their stupid signs that say mass deportations. They'll do what they need to do, say what they need to say to get your vote. And then once they have it, they say, all right, now go away. We don't want to hear your complaints, your criticisms, your ideas. We don't want you to help. We don't want you to have any power. They don't even really care about Christianity or whites or any of that. That's just stuff they say. Then you can go and fuck off while they deliver for the real power. That's the situation here. And by the way, I'll add something to this. Last week, I had a clip go somewhat viral on our side of Twitter because people said, what can we do to help out? And I said, you need to level up. People said I'm telling them to infiltrate the government. I don't like the word infiltration, and maybe I've used it, but it's not the best word. I told people that we want to be the power. We want to get into the best schools. We want to network with the elites. We want to get into the institutions, the top law firms, the biggest businesses, the government. We want to be as influential, rich, and powerful as possible. So I challenge every young, intelligent guy, American, to do this. High school age, college age. Don't tell anybody your deepest, most hardcore views. Pretend to be more liberal than you really are and hide while you slowly accumulate influence, a network, resources, expertise, all those things, access. You want to accumulate all these things. And if your views will prevent that, hide your views, conceal them. And there was a lot of criticism. People said that kind of strategy, marching through the institutions, infiltration, that doesn't work. That's not valuable. Here is the proof in the pudding. If they didn't care, if that wasn't valuable, why would they be fighting so hard to prevent our people from getting in government? Why would there be a rule in PPO that you can't hire Groypers if it didn't matter? If it didn't matter, why would they have new rules at Columbia and Harvard that you can't criticize Israel and you can't get into Northwestern unless you get re-educated about why you need to be pro-Israel? If they don't care, why would they be trotting out the damning text messages knowing that it hurts themselves too? By giving the media these text messages showing Republicans are racist, that hurts all Republicans, even the ones that suck. Why do you think they would go to those lengths to hurt an individual? Because it's threatening to them. And in many ways, it is like a soft civil war. That's what so much of these policies are about. Right now, you can't get a visa into America if you've criticized Israel on your social media. They don't even want people that have criticized Israel in the country. They don't even want them in America, let alone at Harvard, where they're bringing down the Department of Education, taking their grants and loans so that they don't admit or graduate anti-Semites. Forget about the government, where they're doing these things, going to extraordinary lengths to keep people out. If it didn't matter, why would they be trying so hard to prevent it? Why would there be this atmosphere of suspicion? It's because they know the peril here. They know that the children of the elites, the sons of the billionaires and the politicians, are Groypers. They know that the college Republicans, the Turning Point guys, are all Groypers. They know that the young staff in the White House, they're all fucking Groypers, or more hardcore than the Groypers. And they're trying to arrest and turn back that trend. So that's Paul Ingrassia. It's a shame what happened to him, but let this be a lesson. Be like him in the sense that you want to be a lawyer, you want to get in government, you want to build a social platform, you want to make a name for yourself. You want to get to that level. But there's also a teachable moment, which is we can't be playing these games. Nobody's perfect, but we have to try to be as unimpeachable as possible in your personal conduct, in your whatever you put in writing. You just got to be conscious of these things. You can't be putting that stuff on your social platform with your real face and name. You can't be putting that in writing and text messages. You can't be goofing around with women. Whatever happened there, I don't know the whole story, but you got to be mindful of that. Because all that stuff will be used by the Jews, by the establishment to take you out and make it so that you can't threaten them. And all this stuff about cancel culture being over and woke is dead, it all goes out the window. Pay attention. For all this talk there is about cancel culture doesn't exist anymore, I sure see a lot of people getting canceled. I saw a dozen Republicans get fired last week. Gavin Wax still has his job for betraying us. Same story here. Paul Ingrassia, he sent some off-color jokes in a group chat. Big whip. Now there's 10 senators, 10 Republican senators that won't vote for him. There's still a lot of work to be done here. And you'll know that things are better when they'll vote for him anyway, when no one will be turning each other in like that, when people might not even bother because they know it won't make as big of a deal. That's how we'll know that we've made serious progress. But that's that. I want to move on. I want to get into the second story, which is, in my opinion, the bigger story. And it's very related. Our other story for tonight is about a young guy in Texas who was arrested and will be extradited to Florida after he made death threats against Jewish influencers on Twitter. And I'll read the story and then we'll work through it. And I'll tell you why this is really important and why I don't like this. My sixth sense is going off here. It says, quote, a Texas man was arrested and is set for extradition for sending death threats to several Jewish, pro-Israel, and conservative media commentators last week, according to the Florida Attorney General James Uthmire on Monday. Nicholas Ray is facing charges in Florida of extortion, written threats to kill, and unlawful use of a two-way communication device. It's a big deal. Extortion, threat to kill, unlawful use of a phone. Those who claim to have been targeted by Ray include Babylon Bee CEO Seth Dillon, conservative journalist Laura Loomer, New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz, and author Josh Hammer. Dillon shared a screenshot of a social media account that is allegedly controlled by Ray, which claimed that he had conspired with the foreign government about the assassination of Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk. The tweet said, "We're going to get you, I promise. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but you're living on borrowed time and you know it." Dillon noted that the account allegedly belonging to Ray had only followed a handful of anti-Israel accounts and far-right commentator Candace Owens. He said, "Where do you think he got the idea that I was involved in Charlie's murder?" On October 8th, the account accused Hammer of being an Israeli spy and threatened to hang him at the Capitol and take turns beating you with a piñata bat. On October 8th, the account allegedly belonging to Ray threatened Loomer, saying, "You're going to die, little foreign agent," and a day later warned, "You're going to get hung for being a foreign agent, and I'll bake 100 cakes." Markowitz was threatened by the account on October 13th, accusing her of being responsible for the crime of the Soviet Union and telling her that she deserved to be hanged and to watch your fucking back. He said, "Your ancestors are responsible for the Holodomor and now Gaza. You are a genociding Satan bloodline, and you will be eradicated one of these days." The account also told Charlie Kirk producer Andrew Colvett that he was an Israeli asset, and conservative commentator Zach Bonfilio that he would hang him in front of his family several times. And, look, here's the deal. I don't like Laura Loomer. I don't like Josh Hammer. I don't like Seth Dillon. But I don't want them to be killed. I disavow that. I don't want them to be killed. I don't want them to be threatened to be killed. We have to draw that line here. I don't want Charlie Kirk to be killed. I don't want these people to be killed. I don't wish violence upon them. I don't want them to die. I don't like them. I don't agree with them. I think in many ways they're traitors to the country. And I think that they should go live in Israel. I think they'd feel more at home there. But I don't want them to die, and I don't want them to be threatened, and I don't think they should be threatened. And I'll just say that at the outset. And here's the outside of the obvious problem with this. If you've been around and paid a little bit of attention, if you've been around for any amount of time and paid any amount of attention about any of this, it's very obvious where this is headed. They are fighting what they consider an 8-front war against their enemies. And by they, I mean Israel, the Jews. They're fighting in Lebanon. They're fighting in Iran. The 8th front in their war is in America. And look at what they're doing. I gave some examples earlier. They're trying to get the faculty at Harvard fired. They're preventing people from entering America on a visa if they criticized Israel. They're blowing people up with these group chats. And this is another way they're going to fight us. They always have, which is they will find crazy people, or crazy people will present themselves. But these crazy people that are animated by the kind of rhetoric which has become very popular these days, there's been very little restrictions on this sort of speech. People are able to talk very openly about Jews and Israel and the Holocaust and in a very negative way. People are abusing that right now. They're abusing the very liberal climate that we have. They're abusing the opening that has been afforded to us by doing stuff like this. And some of them are crazy and some of them are not. And some of them maybe are being put up to it and some of them are certainly not. But there are crazy people that are taking the crazy low IQ types. They're taking this kind of rhetoric and they're going on Twitter and saying, "We're going to kill them. We're going to kill you. We're going to." And I tell you how the story ends because I lived through it the first time. Here's how the story ends. They're going to take every example of this and they're going to blow it up and put it in front of the media. And you might not think that's a big deal because you might say, well, we're past that. But I'll tell you what happens next. there's going to be a false flag. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get hurt. I pray to God it doesn't happen. I don't want that to happen, but I think it will. I think some psycho is going to snap. Some psycho is going to be groomed and made to snap. Maybe it'll just be a straight up false flag, but something will happen. It will implicate an anti-Semite. And that anti-Semite, you're going to go on his timeline and you're going to see he's following he's going to be following Candace, Tucker, me, Dan Bilzerian, Jake Shields. And his account is going to be filled with cheerleading for us and hatred for them. And it's going to be just as it was before. They're going to convene the Sanhedrin. They're going to convene the council of telecom companies, tech companies, social companies. And they're going to say, we got a real problem on our hands. We have to shut this down. It's gotten out of control. It's gone too far. And suddenly this liberal climate that has been cultivated, where we're able to speak freely, we can talk about these issues openly, it's going to start. Well, it won't start. It will immediately snap shut. Violently and rapidly, it will snap shut in an instant. And this environment of tolerance for those types of opinions, for that sort of dissent, is going to evaporate. And people like Elon Musk will certainly be complicit in it. And it may happen on Rumble too. And it will happen across the board. And that's my biggest concern right now. My biggest concern right now, because this is how they've always operated, and this is a sign of things to come. Maybe this guy's real, maybe he's fake, who knows? We don't know anything about him. But this is the story they're telling us. The story they're telling us is that these guys, these crazies are riled up. There are legitimate psychos. Okay, mental illness is real. That's just true. There are psychos out there. They're digesting this stuff. They are cruel or hateful or sociopathic, and they're making threats. One of them's going to follow through on one of these things. And if or when that happens, they're going to use it to crack down on all of us. I'm telling you, that is where this is headed. And I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want that to happen, but I feel like that's the case. And it's interesting because this guy, this Nicholas Ray, who's threatening everybody, before he got arrested, he was bitching about me. He was not following me on Twitter. He was following Candace. He wasn't following me. And if you go through, he tagged me quite a few times. He said he didn't like me because I blocked him on Twitter. He couldn't follow me because I blocked him. And I blocked him because he was calling me an Israeli spy for saying that Charlie Kirk wasn't killed by Israel. And for that reason, I'm not on his following list. For that reason, if it ever comes to something horrible, I would not be implicated in that situation. Let's say he followed through on one of those threats. It'd be very interesting in that moment who he was following to the U.S. government. And maybe the family of the victim. It'd be another Sandy Hook type slap lawsuit. It would be the FBI all mixed together. There's a lesson in that, which is that each and every one of us, but especially people like myself, have to tread very carefully right now. A lot of people wonder, why do you think it is that there's such a permissive environment to talk about these things all of a sudden? Because it was never like this before. And I've often wondered if maybe this is the reason, which is that the more of this kind of stuff you get, the more people you get talking crazy, talking about murdering everybody and killing people and actual stuff that people, and let me be very explicit about what I'm talking about here, the type of stuff I'm talking about, and then I'll resume on that point. There is a huge audience for people that are sick and tired of this country being owned by Israel, not having sovereignty, being told what to do by Israel, fighting their wars, the press being owned, people being canceled for asking basic questions. Like, the country is ready for that to change. The country wants that to change. There is a broad and deep audience that wants to see that happen, that would support that happening. But when people start to say, I think so-and-so should die. Like when people start going out there and seriously talking about murdering everybody, or people do start murdering people, there's no audience for that. Nobody wants that. Do people want us to stop sending foreign aid? Absolutely. Do people want synagogue shootings? No, nobody wants that. Nobody thinks that's cool. Nobody thinks that's okay or moral or even political. That's just evil. That's just wicked. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that sort of thing. And so clearly the latter is being used to poison the former, which is that they recognize they're in real peril in the sense that the American public is awake. They know what's going on. They're tired of this. They want it to change. Politics is beginning to reflect that. There are people in government that think this way. There's people in Congress that think this way. There's people in the media that think this way. There's billionaires that think this way. And they're going to poison the well, no pun intended, as they always have, by trudging up these sorts of people, egging them on, getting them to carry out an attack, and then using that as a pretext to shut down that conversation and everything that entails. Shutting down the social platforms, shutting down the money, shutting down the influencers, shutting down the universities. Maybe you're talking about hate speech laws, surveillance. I mean, we're talking about restrictions on not just our private activities, like, let's say, having a Twitter account, but even our civil rights, even our civil liberties. And that's not an exaggeration, especially when you consider this is a Trump government. It's a Trump government that was swept in by the Zionists on the heels of October 7th. And who is Trump empowered in the White House? It's a company like Palantir. It's Silicon Valley. This is what they specialize in. AI, big data, surveillance. This is their jam. You don't think that Alex Karp and J.D. Vance and Trump and Stephen Miller and Netanyahu and Mark Levin and Rupert Murdoch, you don't think they would not love to go through TikTok and X and use an AI-empowered algorithm to shut down every anti-Semitic comment? Of course they would. And to spy on all those DMs, open all those messages, look at all the metadata, and start rounding these people up. I mean, that's the maximum. At the minimum, start wiping them off the internet. That's the next shoe to drop. So this is why I say, and I've been saying it about Candace Owens, we need to be very careful moving forward. I'm not saying to stop the conversation. I'm saying we have to tread lightly, because people are becoming convinced that the only direction we can go in is more based. It's always good, more extreme, more intense, more angry, more hateful, more extreme, more radical. Doing each other. How radical can we get? How insane and extreme can we blame Jews for everything? Are we just absolute Hitler worshipers now? Are we in favor of a final solution? It's always more of that. And they think that things will just keep going the way they've always gone, which is to say that it was blue-pilled, it got red-pilled. It's going to go from here and get even more red-pilled. And I'm telling you, no, that is not what's going to happen. What is going to happen soon is what happened 10 years ago, which is that when the conversation gets too hot, they do an operation. They run the op and they shut it down. It always happens. And they sweep all of it out with the nonsense, all of that out with the bad stuff, just like they did with Christchurch, just like they did with the Buffalo shooting. Do you remember that in 2018, 2019? It was a spate of far-right mass killings. It got 8chan taken down. It got Daily Stormer taken down. It got Twitter to begin purging everybody. YouTube, that's where censorship came from. And a part of me wonders, did they open it up and are they tolerating some of this stuff without any restrictions because they want it to overheat? Maybe that's the plan. They get the conversation to overheat, and then people welcome when it's shut down. They welcome a reasonable set of restrictions, a reasonable set of rules. And they'll be anything but that. That's what I'm really concerned about now when I see this, because I mean, I read stuff like this, and honestly, if this is you, we don't want anything to do with that. We can make jokes and we can have fun and we can be politically incorrect. I'm not trying to be the joke police. It's not about what's funny and not funny. It's about the fact that we have tangible political goals. And to that extent, we have to fully embody who we are. And what we are is Christian. We are not actually in favor of psychos killing people and threatening to kill people. That's not conducive actually to a harmonious society, which is what we want. And I don't find that to be appealing at all. And if you do, I think you're sick. This person who's on Twitter going around saying, we're going to kill you, we're going to hang you. I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's funny. I don't think that's desirable. That's not moral. That's sick shit. And more than that, it's going to get us all fucked. Okay? Not only is that sick and twisted and depraved, and I'm not virtue signaling, I'm just saying I don't believe in that. I don't support that. Not only is it bad, but it's also going to be used to destroy us, as it always has. And all the legitimate dissent and grievances about a system that is unacceptable, that's all going to be suppressed because of this. That's how this works. So it's sort of an ominous warning. And it wasn't a big story. It didn't get a ton of headlines, but this is how it always goes. So we need to be very on guard. And I would caution even Candace, this is even for her own benefit, because she's got a husband, she's got kids, you know, and she's a grifter. I think she's all about herself. She wants her show to be as big as possible at any cost. She'll stretch the truth. She'll conceal information and drip feed it so that she gets bigger views. She's flying too close to the sun. And I say that even for her own good. It's not hard to see her winding up in an Alex Jones-like situation where she gets too big, she gets too hot, she slips up and she's careless. Something happens and they hold her liable for it, and they gun for her big time. And I'm not insinuating, I mean like they come for her legally, it's lawfare, whatever, you know, and the same goes for Tucker, kind of. He's a little bit less reckless, but you could see that that's where it's going. So I would not be responsible if I didn't tell you that there are some serious risks here, major potential vulnerabilities. And I see some of these people, they're not taking it seriously because they just, I don't know, they think it's a game. Maybe they haven't lived through it, but maybe they're sick themselves. But we got to be honest, we have to kind of clean some of this stuff up, or they're going to do it for us. Not that it's our obligation, but if there's not a sort of circumscribed policy about that stuff, there's the ambiguity is what they will use to come after us. That's why people need to kind of come out strongly and say, we're about this, not this. What we want is for Israel to leave us alone. We don't want them to run our government. We want Larry Ellison to stop buying the media. We think Bari Weiss is a spy. We want them to stop. But we're not about going and shooting people up and killing people and messing around with that. That's not right. There needs to be a hard line drawn on this, or like I said, they will use that to hang us, literally and figuratively, and then forget about it. So the situation right now is what is hurting them. What is hurting their regime is the slow and steady mass awakening. When people get the information, when they stop believing in the legitimacy of the system, when you have people infiltrating every facet of the government, that's good. That's positive. That's pointing towards sovereignty. But the second that they get some psycho that pulls a trigger, they're going to use that to spy on everybody, find every Groyper. They're going to say, oh, the killer followed Candace, Tucker, Nick, and Dan. We have to go through all their followers, go through all their followers' bank records, see who they're watching, if they donated, put them on the enemies list, and then we're going to watch them. And we're going to take away their liberties. And then the noticing will stop. The door will slam shut. Trust me. That is what they do. Well, don't even trust me. Think it through. They will welcome that. So anyway, so that's that. But I do want to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this.
All right, let's get right to it. So Nick pretty much covered two topics in this episode. We're going to talk about the Paul Ingrassia, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, situation. And then I'm going to discuss a little bit as far as not being able to get a visa if you've criticized Israel on your social media. All right, so let's start off with the Paul Ingrassia. And this seems to be a trend where a lot of people are being exposed. And this even happened, it happened with the California candidate for Democrat, that lady, I forget that lady that was tripping out in her interviews. She was, I guess, not liking the questions or whatever. And now people are always going back and highlighting, you know, exactly somewhere where it may be embarrassing or anything like that. But when I even thinking about it, that's been happening. That's been happening. Now it's just more relevant because we're seeing all these text messages be leaked. And especially with the temperature of what's happening in a lot of these text exchanges, people joking, people just, you know, feeling that they can talk freely. And to be totally honest, the majority of these things are jokes, and the majority of these things are said in a way that, well, let me ask y'all, actually, let me not assume, are the majority of these exchanges jokes? You know, whether it's the young Republicans, whether it's the Jay Jones, do you think that was a joke? All right, so I think there has to be some type of context, or this Paul Ingrassia one. It's kind of one of those tough issues, if we're being honest. It's like, you know, we all talk about free speech, but with that free speech, you're going to be held accountable for what you're saying. And the same thing goes with a group message. And even though a lot of these are jokes, I'm not telling people to change what they're saying, or, you know, maybe this is just necessary to get people to not be so sensitive when it comes to certain jokes, or maybe on the other end, it'll wake people up to understanding that a lot of the things that they're saying in group messages, text, maybe they shouldn't use such language or should scale it back a little bit. I don't know. I don't care. And the reason why I'm saying I don't know and I don't care, one, I really don't know, you know, what should be the actual, let's say, like, what should happen? You know, shoot, hold somebody accountable. If that's what they said, if that's a joke, you know, okay. You know, I still may not like it. I still may find it offensive. So I'm probably not likely to, you know, continue supporting that person. Now, should they get canceled? I don't know if the Paul Ingrassia guy got canceled, but if they're no longer able to get the votes, if people are no longer going to support them based on certain things that they've done and said privately, then, you know, I can understand that. I just don't see another option. Like, I don't see, like, how else could something like this be resolved? Should we just say, oh, it happened privately, so it's all good? Because then what's going to end up happening? Then people will just present one way, live private lives that they will know they won't be held accountable in their public role. So therefore, they'll just behave however. No, it's natural. Like, you're going to look at what they've done privately, if it gets exposed, and judge them accordingly. Some people will choose to judge people harshly. Other people will give people a pass. It is what it is. You know, it is what it is. I had a couple questions that I asked myself that I was pondering on. But do I want someone in office that shows their quote unquote racism or prejudice, bigotry, fascism in text? Nah, I don't want somebody in office like that, because typically how you joke, it does say a bit about you, right? Like the jokes that you're making, the jokes that you're comfortable, the things that you're comfortable saying. I'm not saying that it says something negative or positive, but it does say something about you, right? It is somewhat of a representation of who you are. Then the next question I have is, do I think people use language in private messages that is racist because they're in a private conversation? Yes. Do I think that that always means that they're racist? No. If I'm just being straightforward with you. Now, if you're running for a certain type of position, this dates back. You know, people are going to use certain things to either let's say, push you, just like somebody may tell a story of, hey, let's say one day I'm running for office and somebody shares a private story or a private conversation that they might have had with me where it's very favorable, where they're talking about how I may have helped them out in a particular area in their life or whatever it is. Judge me for that. But then I can't sit here and act as if somebody says a negative or exposes something negative that I may have done or a negative interaction, judge me for that. Throw everything on the table. And, I'm confident that, if it's me personally, throw everything on the table and then judge me accordingly. You figure out what you want to weigh heavier than the next thing. But overall, I'm willing to stand on, who I am as a person. So that's all I can say about that. Like, this is the problem when you get in these text messages, these group messages, and you say certain things, and then people may use it to hurt you in the future. Just is what it is. If you're worried about it, then don't use that language. It shouldn't be that hard to say, like, to scale back on, saying I got a little Nazi in me or something. I don't know if that's what I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, a lot of these I'm sure are jokes, but when you offend certain people, a joke to you may not be a joke to somebody else. And that's just the way it is. So with Paul Ingrassia, I was looking at a few of the messages that he sent and listening to what Nick was saying. I didn't really know about this situation before Nick brought it up, but he wrote, I do have a Nazi streak in me from time to time. I can easily see that being a joke, but obviously that's going to be offensive to people. Obviously, if you're not Jewish and don't have a connection, let's say, to the Nazis and the Holocaust, you may not be as impacted as that as somebody that is. We all go through this if we're being real. Certain jokes that people can make, if it doesn't address you or if it's not related to you, then obviously it may not be as relevant or hit hard, hit as close to home as somebody who it actually did impact their lives. Somebody could easily say, like, you're making jokes about something that killed my ancestors. Yeah, I get that. I don't know what to say. Martin Luther King Day and other Black heritage holidays, he allegedly wrote, MLK Jr. was the 1960s George Floyd. I disagree with that, but I have an issue with him saying it, whatever. MLK Jr. was the 1960s George Floyd, and his holiday should be ended and tossed into the seventh circle of hell where it belongs. Okay. Like, literally. Okay. All right. From Kwanzaa to MLK Jr. Day to Black History Month to Juneteenth, every single one needs to be eviscerated. From Kwanzaa to MLK Jr. Day to Black History Month to Juneteenth. And all right, cool. I actually, it's not that I agree with what he's saying. I'd have to actually process it, and it'll take a while for me to maybe explain. And I don't want to branch off into that. But we could definitely address that one day. But when it comes to all these holidays, and I just heard something about Kwanzaa where I was like, that's pretty wild as far as the origins of it. A lot different than what I think a lot of people who celebrate it would draw connections to. MLK Jr. Day, Black History Month. I've been one of these people, like a Morgan Freeman, like, yo, get rid of this. Get rid of this. It's February. It's 28 days. I feel like you're taking slights at me already with that. Juneteenth. Like I don't care what the government recognizes as a holiday, if I'm being totally honest. I don't care. If it's that important to me, if it's that important to my culture, then I'll just recognize it. We'll recognize it. We'll celebrate it, perhaps for the right reasons. Okay. I'm also one of these people who thinks that when you keep using these, let's say like a Black History Month, where I just don't think that it does as much of a service to us as we think. All it does is recycle the same people in the headlines. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, she sat on the bus in the whites only section. And maybe I'm just turned off by the surface level, history that is usually conveyed during Black History Month. And in my opinion, a lot of the history is wrong or misguided and used like a lot of these other things to push particular agendas at the time that I'm not necessarily 100% aligned with, if I'm just being honest. He also allegedly said things like never trust a Chinaman or Indian. He rejected the idea that all men are created equal and wrote, we need competent white men in positions of leadership. Look, as somebody who doesn't identify my people by black people, like I used to be one of those type of people, and I just have different goals. I don't like where that thinking and mindset brought me, to be totally honest. I just don't like it. Now, I was also privileged to be raised in a town that is extremely diverse, just as many black kids as white kids in school, Indian kids, Spanish kids, Latin kids, Hispanic, whatever, the proper term is. I know it goes back and forth, it seems like, but all different types of kids, Jewish kids, all different backgrounds from a socioeconomic standpoint, race, religion, ethnicity, culture, everything across the board. So that obviously growing up in that type of environment does serve as somewhat of a bubble, because even after I left my Montclair, New Jersey hometown and went down to school in Virginia, I realized that things are a little bit different just when you don't grow up in that type of environment. And that's in all aspects, not just like, oh, those white people down there, black people have a different perspective. You just grow up with a different perspective than if you grow up in an environment where most of the people look just like you compared to growing up in a diverse town. He rejected the idea that all men are created. We need competent white men in positions of leadership. Like, how about just competent men in positions of leadership? Or just, I guess if I say we need competent men in positions of leadership, there's going to be people who say, well, why not just get rid of the man too and say we need competent people in positions of leadership? Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I am more traditional and conservative when it comes to leadership roles. Not that, and I don't look at leadership as something where you're just telling people to do, where I think men can just boss women around and just women, their only purpose is to be submissive to men. I'm not saying any of that. I just look at leadership, that responsibility, when I think of a household, a home, a family. I think that the man should take on that burden. Now, to each their own, whatever works for your relationship, cool. But my mindset is the man should take on that leadership role. And the woman takes on a leadership role in different areas. And that's when we talk about leadership, like, what are we really talking about in the household? We're pretty much talking about provision and protection. Who's providing and who's protecting? Well, obviously, I think that it makes more sense for a man in most cases to be the protector, to be the lead protector. Men are stronger, more equipped in a lot of ways, like especially to confront a dangerous situation like another man. I just think that men should take on that role. If you have it otherwise, then cool, whatever works for you. So when we look at a leadership position like that, it's almost as if, I know like a lot of women can get uncomfortable with it because we're only talking about that aspect of leadership. When it comes to running the household, I think the mother should lead in that area. So we're each leading in different roles, just like any other team. I'm a football guy, grew up playing football. So there's different roles. The running back may get all the touchdowns. The lineman may never score, but that doesn't mean that, that offensive tackle doesn't lead in his position. And even though the running back's the one scoring the touchdowns, just look at what the best offensive tackles get paid compared to the best running backs. Maybe across the board, not even the best offensive tackles. Look at what an offensive tackle gets paid compared to a running back. So we each excel in our role and lead in our role. I think that's what needs to be the focus, not who's the leader as far as who gets the last say. Well, depends on what the situation is. But the one thing about leadership, what I will say is when things go wrong, then who wants that burden to be on them? Who wants that burden to be on them? So maybe that's what we should lead with, because we look at leadership as, something that everybody wants to do. It's fun. No, being the leader comes with a whole bunch of responsibilities, working harder than everybody else, putting in more time, effort, energy into not only developing you, but to making sure that you're leading the family in a good direction. Too many of us look at leadership, just want to be leaders just because. Y'all remember Paid in Full? One of my favorite lines in Paid in Full was Cameron saying, half these Negroes want to be the man just cuz. Half these cats want to be the man just cuz. Just want to be the man because it looks glorious, because it looks fun, it looks cool. Yeah, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that comes along with that. And people want to be leaders without embracing the responsibilities that leadership usually comes with. But I don't even know how we got to that point. But I guess that's just going back to we need competent white men in positions of leadership. Okay. I mean, I don't, you know why I say okay like that? Because even in some of the messages that I'm having in my group message, it's like we need white men and like, yo, just say, I feel like it's a little bit of I feel like it's a little cowardly in my opinion. And hear me out. And it's not cowardly with everybody saying it. But when I hear, and maybe this is just how it triggers me emotionally, I got to be aware of this. When I hear people say we need more competent white men, well, who exactly are you talking about? Let's actually look at it a different way. Who are you saying that we need more competent white men? So who's there right now that you need to replace with competent white men? And I feel like whenever people say white, and maybe this is just, like I said, our bias, my personal bias, growing up in this culture, growing up in American culture where everything tends to be black and white. When you say black, it's usually white, you know what I mean? So when you say white, it's like, well, what are you really saying? Are you saying like are Jewish people considered white in this situation? Are you talking about, across the board, like Chinese, Korean? Are we talking about like what? I'm just wondering who. When you say we need more competent white men in positions of leadership, to replace who? Because I'm going to tell you why. Speaking of group messages, this group message that I'm in, it seems to be a lot. Like I'm in the chat and I'm looking at people and I'm like, they're talking about black people. And I'm like what group of organized, mostly white men are talking about black people? And when I say mostly white men, I'm talking mostly non-Jewish people, I believe, are in this chat. It's like black people have an annual household income that is like a fourth, maybe less than a fourth, maybe like between a third, fourth, or something like that, than the top people who earn in this country. I believe at the top are Indians and Jewish Americans. So Indian Americans and Jewish Americans. So I'm looking like, why? Like, I've never seen like the greats or the people, the teams in football or basketball, whatever your sport is, the number one team focus so much on the last place team. I've just never seen that. Blaming them for why they're not successful, blaming them for all and it's like, what? They're talking about the crime that black people commit against white people. And I'm just like, wait, where is this? Last time I checked, I could have a suit on and be walking through the Bronx. And I feel like I'm more likely to have something happen to me than a random white guy just walking through the Bronx. Like most black people are scared to do stuff to white people, if we're being totally honest. They'll shoot somebody that looks just like them in a heartbeat. But a white person, they'll think twice. Like, so I'm in the group chat and they're blaming black violence and all this other stuff. I'm just like, wait, like what? I was like, okay, like I get it. And a lot of the things that they're writing in the chat, I actually call out. And a lot of black people probably think like, it's Uncle Tom. I call that stuff out because I think each group should call itself out. Just like I talk about quote unquote good police calling out bad police, Jewish people calling out what may be happening throughout your Jewish culture, whatever the situation is. Muslim people may be calling out certain things that happen with it could be white people calling, it's across the board. I think that if you have a group and there's issues within that particular group and people are placing the issues, blanketing. Now, I said I don't identify my people as just black people, but when people make those blanket statements as far as black people this, then I do think that black people should be the ones addressing a lot of the black cultural issues that we have in our households and our communities. I definitely think that. But when I'm sitting in the chat looking at white men complaining about it, I'm like, bro, what? Like, I left the Democrats for all this victimhood stuff, man. I left the Dem for all this blame game and stuff like that. Feeling like a victim. Nothing's holding me back. Nothing's holding me back. That's just my mindset. Maybe something is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But maybe I'm just going through life with so much privilege. Maybe that's just how I choose to see things. I don't know. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. So Paul Ingrassia, he was, it seems like he's not going to be nominated, or he withdrew from going through with the vote because he didn't have as much Republican support as he would have needed. So it says because of the nature of the alleged text and the bipartisan pushback, including from Trump's own party, Ingrassia withdrew his nomination. All right. So I don't know. Like I'm just, when it comes to a lot of these issues with the text messages being released, look, I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm not a naive person when it comes to understanding how people may communicate in their group messages and how that may not be 100% of the way that they feel, but it's just jokes. It's a way to express themselves, maybe let out a lot of their frustrations. I know it's an easy selling point for a lot of people. If you want to rile people up or get a following, then just, start a group message, start dropping the N-word and all of that stuff. I get it. All right, I get it, and there's no but. I get it, period. Cool. It is what it is. Like I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. I think it was very similar to what this one was, as far as Nick mentioned that you can no longer, or they're limiting visas. Like if you apply for a visa, they're checking your social media to see if you criticize Israel or said anything anti-Semitic. I had no idea about this. I asked ChatGPT, is it true that you can't get a visa if you criticize Israel on your social media? ChatGPT responded and said there's no blanket rule that you will automatically be denied a U.S. visa simply for criticizing Israel on social media. But there are instances where visa applicants or holders have had their status affected by their social media posts, especially when those posts are perceived to involve extremist support, generalized hate, or affiliation with designated terrorist organizations. Now, that's a nice way of saying, they can pick and choose who they want to target. But let's look at what's actually happening. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that they will begin screening social media accounts of visa and/or green card applicants for anti-Semitic activity, including posts that endorse, espouse, promote, or support anti-Semitic terrorism, anti-Semitic terrorist organizations, or other anti-Semitic activity. For example, academia-related cases show students anticipating a visa for the U.S. were subject to intense scrutiny of their and their friends' social media posts about Hamas or Israel. This is just another one of those things that they're putting in place that it seems like, Israel is flexing its weight, flexing its muscle, and, trying to control how Americans not only look at Israel, but trying to control the culture of free speech and what's allowed as far as what can be said about Israel and what can't be said about Israel, which is kind of wild for that to be going on in America, especially considering that I don't think we have a lot of these same things put in play when it comes to other cultures. I know during 2020 or 2019, I believe they put in, I'm not sure about the date, but I know they put in like an Asian hate, crime bill when Trump kept saying, I'm assuming it was in 2019 because I'm assuming that it had to pass when Biden was in office. I'm assuming it's 2020 because I'm assuming that it had to pass while Biden was in office. So would that be 2021 or 2020? Whenever Biden came into office. So around that time where they put in the Asian hate crime bill, I guess because Trump remember when he kept saying China, talking about where the pandemic was coming from, Corona. So what's the answer to all this? What's the solution? And I think this week And overall in the weekend, when I just had my 20th anniversary, where I was talking about going to my school, going back home to such a diverse school where politics didn't matter, how much money you made, going back to when you're a kid and you're just playing, growing up with other kids from various backgrounds. None of that stuff mattered. None of that stuff mattered. And what it reminded me of was to focus on the solution, and that we've already seen a solution to this. We know that we can live in harmony. Just because we've done it as kids and we get away from it when we're adults does not mean that we can't learn from those experiences as kids before we have the world shaped for us largely by the propaganda that the media pushes to us, with news outlets, with entertainment, Hollywood, across the board, trying to get us to see things a particular way so that way they can justify doing evil or whatever else they need to do for their personal interests while they divide and conquer us, obviously at our detriment. So let's just look at it as being more solution oriented with all these things rather than, complaining. And I'm not even sure when I look at these topics if that directly makes sense, to be totally honest, when it comes to what's the solution for, the text messages. I don't know. I assume it would be us having some sort of understanding where, okay, I understand that they may be joking in their tags. They may not exactly mean it as it was, said in that joke of a group message, a private message. But then also on the other end, like, maybe y'all should tone down some of this rhetoric, because even though you may not be buying into the rhetoric, maybe a lot of your followers are. And that's another thing, very quickly. So we talk to a lot of college kids and high school kids, and we just did a program where we're talking to them about how, when we were pursuing our NFL dreams, the tools and skills that we learned along the way, and using those to inspire and equip the kids with different tools that they may be able to have a competitive advantage when they're out there in the real world. So one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of these kids in high school and college, they lack motivation, they lack inspiration, a lot of it. And it's sad. It's sad being in a classroom when you ask them, like, who thinks that they can accomplish anything they want in this world? And nobody raises their hand, and they're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Fellas, y'all got all that testosterone and you just trying to be bare minimum, you know what I mean? And so it's the culture. And then I realized, like, it's because they're not inspired. So then when they get hold of somebody, let's say like a guy like Nick Fuentes or somebody else that may be a dynamic personality, they're going to hold on to every single word that that person says because they lack so much inspiration in other areas, perhaps, right? So I do think that maybe it is, a balance of, people not trying to cancel people over certain jokes. Now some may push the envelope a little bit too much, but overall understanding that they're jokes, people in their private conversations, but also understanding like, perhaps some of those jokes that y'all are making that are acting like have no influence and don't shape how you see things in the world. Maybe they do. So maybe you should tone it back a little bit. I don't know. Y'all let me know. As always, appreciate y'all. Like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. What else do I got? Oh yeah, most importantly, leave a comment. I'm biased. Sometimes it creates blind spots. So let me know where I may be off on something. I try to be as objective as possible, but obviously our own personal experiences come into play when we're processing a lot of these things. So I want to make sure that I didn't miss out on anything. And as y'all always do, please correct me. So on that note, I'll see y'all soon.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.